And so now the whipping of the meringue is similar to what we've done before with the French technique, and the fact that we're gonna take it pretty relatively slow and steady. I want to scrape out all of the egg white for sure. It's such a small amount, 50 grams. We don't want to leave any behind in the bowl. When we go to mix this up, we did a little bit of whisking so far, got a little bit frothy. That we're gonna max out on medium speed, which for this purple machine is 6. So I don't really need to start on low to help dissolve things as we do in the French technique, because that's what the double boiler did. So now I can take this up to 6. It's probably gonna take multiple minutes. I'll keep a timer on it. We're gonna do this in time lapse for stiff peaks. All right, we're about 7 minutes in, mixing on 6 speed. Let's kind of check where we are. We see that we have a nice shiny meringue. It looks like marshmallow, but this peak is actually not standing up the way that I'd expect. Okay, and this should be clumped up more in the whisk, as you see here, on its own, not from me dragging it in. Okay, so after 7 minutes on 6, most of the sugar obviously has been dissolved during the process, and this is pretty stabilized with that slow speed. So I actually can get a little bit more aggressive towards a 10, keeping an eye on it, making sure I don't over whip it. So we'll just come in and out with editing to speed up the process, and we'll tell you the total time when we're done. But I'm gonna take this up to a higher speed now. That was 30 seconds at 10. Lifting this up. This is sticking in the wires a little bit more and a little bit stiffer. Okay, not quite standing up the way that we need it to. Let's go another 30 seconds and check. And now another 30 seconds in, so about 7 or 8 minutes on the 6 speed, and what would end up being another minute. Now this is standing up on its own. That's the stiff peaks that we're looking for. Let's position our camera to get ready for the folding in, the macaronage, adding the color and the piping. Okay, so bang out all of your meringue. Make sure you capture all of it. Go ahead and transfer your meringue into your bowl, which you're going to be adding the color and doing your folding. We'll max out at about 3 to 4 drops. Shake this first. Make sure there's no crust on the edge that might fall in. 1, 2, those are pretty big drops, so I'm going to stop at 2. I'd see more like 3. And fold this in, lifting from the bottom. It's kind of a J pattern. And I'm not so worried about all of the color being incorporated, because it's going to get folded in as we do our macaronage. So again, don't add all the dry at once. Maybe about 3 additions or half. So this is a smaller amount than what we use for the French technique. And we're getting this absorbed till it will come off our spatula in a thick ribbon. I make a figure 8. And again, we'd rather over whip the meringue to make it extra thick as opposed to under whip. And then when we fold this in, I'm going to add the rest of it now. We'd rather under mix this than over mix it and deflate it too much. Okay? So there's room for error. You got to know which way we want to come down on that. All right, we have stuff on the side. You can flatten this against the side to help absorb it. It's not until all the dry ingredients are absorbed, which they now are, that I tend to start looking for that ribbon. It's coming off in a clump. Do not come off in a consistent ribbon. So I will go ahead and pull that up in the bottom of the bowl. So I'm kind of fold it over. This little streak of white and pink that I see. This is about another 10 folds, I think, before I'm trying to see again. Now it's coming off a little bit more consistently in a ribbon, so I think I'm going to try to do my figure 8 test and see. So does it come off that I could do an 8, swirl it over itself? Yes, we can. Then I'm saying it's time to put it into the bag. So when you guys put this in the bag, remember to get all the product out of the bowl that you can. These are extra large bags, more than we need for capacity, but that's so that you can get this thicker batter in here more easily from a wider opening, because it doesn't really pour in so easily. If it poured in easily, then you've overmixed your batter. It should be thick and clean to the spatula when you transfer. All right, set that off to the side. And remember, we're going to use just a little bit of the batter as glue in the corner. So if I put a dollop there, and I'm struggling to get some out of the bowl, it's a good thing, most of it's in the bag. Dollop there, then that will let paper stay in place. I set this down. Make sure I position my camera. And remember that I'm going to have the tip of the bag about ½ an inch off. Start piping, coming around the side. Okay. There's a black inner circle. I'm just going to pipe to that. It'll spread out on its own. By the time I come around to the second row, I'm looking back to this first one to see if it settled down. Hopefully it does. I'm going to want to milk this down as best I can to start with without oozing anywhere, and I'll re-grip as necessary. So piping, black circle pull off. Okay, it might look like a bit of a Hershey's Kiss with a tip on top, but we're gonna bang out the bubbles. Okay, if I have to choke down again on the bag, kind of doing that over a circle so that any drippage will be in that area. I'm to the end of my second row, looking back at the first. I see that mostly it's flattened itself out, so that's a good sign. I'm having to squeeze this bag down, milk it down to the bottom, because this is a little bit thicker batter. But again, I'd rather under mix on my macaronage than over. Okay, so I'm at the end of the third row, coming around on this fourth row. There's the air bubble for sure there. Remember this last one, I often have to push my finger through the bag from the outside. That one's gonna be a little bit oversized to get it out. All right, recall that we're going to look to bang the bubbles out of this. Got some other clutter in the way. Either the bottom tap, just dropping it a few times on the countertop. Get in the habit of pulling this out now. The mat, because someone else may need it for piping. We don't bake on this. That's another layer of insulation, change our bake times. And again, we're not going to want to bake these off until this, see how wet that is dry on top and forms that skin. And you can achieve that quicker in the classroom by these being underneath the hood as the oven's heating up to 325. So we'll come back for our bake after these have a chance to dry. All right, and our oven is preheated to 325, and we definitely have a dry appearance to the top of our macarons, forming that skin that's going to help trap the water inside the egg white to turn into steam to puff these up and get those feet that we're looking for. The hood definitely helps that out. At home, it can take 20-30 minutes depending on the humidity, and quite frankly, sometimes they may never entirely dry out. So oven open. You give it 30 minutes max before you bake these off. All right, these are going in again upside down so that heat can circulate. We'll check these in 10 minutes time. All right, we're up at 10 minutes of baking time. Oven open. Let's go ahead and see how these are doing. So, coming out. Definitely seeing the formation of good looking feet. We take and move these side to side. You can see that they still wiggle a little bit. I only want to do that to one, not to mess them up. And so I like the foot to not wiggle so much side to side. So I think they're going to need probably another minute. Come back and check again. We don't want these things to be burned, but if anything, we want them to be a little bit over-baked and a little bit crisp, because they'll get soft as the filling is added into them, as opposed to them being underdone and then sticking to the parchment. All right, so it's been another minute. Oven open. Slide this out. This is not sliding as much. Pretty firm. So we're ready to take these out. And we're gonna go ahead and bring them up. Slide them up onto the countertop. Get them off the sheet pan right away. So if these come up and stay on the sheet pan that's super hot, they're going to continue to bake. Slide them off so they have a chance to cool down right away. All right, and now these have had a chance to cool on the counter. We can do our final analysis. These are looking to peel fairly easily off the paper. It's a great sign. They have what we call a foot, okay, the foot at the bottom. They may actually be a little bit of what we call hollow. The fact that they're so tall, I know that they have a bit of a hollowness to them. And when I break this open, what I mean by that is that there's a gap. There's a gap between the top of the shell and the cookie underneath. And the concern about that hollow is the fact that as you bite into this, this might shatter, come apart, you know, and fall out of your hand. Okay, we're not so concerned about this level of hollow, I would say, because once we fill these, they should actually be put in the fridge overnight to have a chance to what we say mature. And what's going to happen when they mature is that the buttercream, whatever filling you're going, is going to go to right here, touch this side, and then that will kind of soften this cookie, and oftentimes it can kind of bring the top together with the bottom, so you don't really have to deal with that hollow. All right, what do we do with these shells now before we fill them is they should get filled fairly soon and put into the refrigerator to mature. You could eat them right away if you had to, but it's better off if they have a chance to store overnight. And if we're not going to fill these right away, then we should get these into the freezer directly. And from the freezer, then we can take them out and fill them when they're ice cold and give them a chance to defrost in the refrigerator overnight in an airtight container. And I often do freeze these shells as a matter of course, so that the bottom of the shell, if it was a little bit sticky and not wanting to peel off, it peels off easier when it's in frozen state. So I can fill these right now because they're peeling off easily, or I can put them in the freezer for longer term storage to fill at a later time.